welcome again to my channel. My name is Jeremy Lee. Every week I'm going to make a new videos about history topics. If you're students in school or you're just interested about history, then this channel might be for you. And today we are going to talk about Thomas Aquinas. He was one of the great Christian thinker in history, other than Augustine. He was known for his great work, which is we will talk more on this soon. Thomas Aquinas was born in 1224 in the city of Roccasecca, Italy. He came from an aristocrat wealthy family by the name of Aquinas. All of his older siblings have a very important role in the society. They had a prestigious position in society. To secure the prospect of Thomas' future, his mother put him in a monastery by the name of Monte Cassino. This is the monastery runs by the Benedictine monks. If you remember about the Benedictine monks, these are the monastic order founded by someone by the name of Benedict in the 5th century in Rome. This monastery run under 3 monastic vows, which is the vow of chastity, the vow of obedience, and also the vow of poverty. But at this moment, in the 13th century, this simple monastery is no longer simple. The monastery in Monte Cassino had turned into something more to be described as a palace. It accumulated wealth, and the living conditions of the monks were also improved. No longer for these monks who live in this monastery really practicing on a vow of poverty. For each one of them, they receive a lot of luxuries that the predecessors never had before and never think about it before. It was not a bad thing to be a monk in Monte Cassino for Thomas Aquinas. So Thomas Aquinas, he was being sent into this monastery at the age of 5 years old. The purpose is like this. One day, when Thomas Aquinas is old enough, he can replace his uncle who was the abbot of the monastery. Well, that was considered to be a very promising career. It was a very promising future for Thomas Aquinas. And of course, to preserve the honor of the Aquinas family, all of the members of the Aquinas family must have a very important job or important position in a society. Now think it this way. Hopefully, Thomas Aquinas will become like the abbot of Monte Cassino. Pretty big deal, isn't it? One day, at the age of 14 years old, Thomas Aquinas, he was being sent to the University of Paris to study further about the theology. Now, it was in the University of Paris, Thomas Aquinas, he met a new monastic order by the name of Dominican. Who are these Dominicans? And what is this Dominican order? I have to give a background information about Europe in the 12th century. The chasm between the poor and the rich, it always become the problem throughout ages, including the time of like Middle Ages. Since the inventions of money, something that is unavoidable, certain group of people, they will having too much money, and meanwhile, the other group of people, the majority of the group of people, they do not have enough money. I will not going to explain the complexity of how the economy works, but somehow there was this kind of like, imbalance and injustice kind of like system that being created because of not the money, but the love for money itself. Some Christians during the Middle Ages, they decided to do something about this problem. Rather than living in secluded places, away from the city, away from the world, and then living in a cloister, living in a bubble that where everything is just like, pure and holy, immersing themselves in a spiritual discipline, or known as the asceticism, some of the Christians, they actively being part of the world. For example, someone by the name of Saint Francis, to answer the problem with the poverty, Francis willing to serve this poor and then live among this poor. And that was Francis. There was this another person who lived in the Middle Ages, someone by the name of Dominic, which is later the church gave him the title as the Saint Dominic. He started also a monasticism movement by the name of Dominican order. To the Dominican orders, the answer to the poverty is through the intellectual route. What does that mean? So that means as a Christians, we need to immerse ourselves in study and teaching, and then serving the world by preaching, serving the world by sharing the message of God through preaching. So therefore, the Dominican monks, they spend years, they spend the rest of their life to study at the same time teaching the Word of God to people through preaching. In fact, this monastic order known also as the order of preachers. Maybe you should ask question like, why preaching? Why study? Why learning? Because according to the Dominican order, the source of the problem with the poverty is the false teaching, or we know it as the heresy, which is at that time, it was the problem for many people. Many people, they were being influenced by the false teaching. They did not practice what they've learned in the scriptures into their daily life seriously. Sometimes later, this order of preacher, the Dominicans, they were being falsely entitled as God's hound or dog. Now, what does that mean? Because they got the idea from the word Dominican, Dominicanus, which is sounds like Dominicanus, which is like Dominus means kind of like the Lord, and then Canus means dog, God's dog, which is to some extent the Dominican order agree that they are trying to guard God's truth in the world. They will guard and they will do anything for God's truth. So let's go back to Thomas Aquinas. As he was in the University of Paris, he met some of these Dominican monks. He felt this strong desire to join this Dominican. You see like what is the problem? He was the Benedictine monk and then he decided to become like the Dominican monk. Of course, this decision received a resistance from the family, especially the mother. So Thomas Aquinas did not get the approval from the family to move to different order, to move to Dominican order, which is at that time I will not going to be too harsh on the family because this was just a new monastic order. These are like only few years old compared to the Benedictine order, which is already exists since 5th century. And not just that one. If you remember what I said, like what is the main motivations of the family of Thomas Aquinas want him to become the Benedictine monk, is to become the abbot of Monte Cassino monastery someday in the future. So it's more on prestige, it's more on the family honor, it's more on the, wealth. And so with his family disapproval, Thomas was being kidnapped, or to be more exact, Thomas was being monk-napped because he's a monk and then he got napped, he got capped. You guys get it? Monk-napped? Never mind. He was being kept in a family castle and then he was being locked for 2 years in his bedroom. He was not allowed to leave until he changed his mind, that he willing to return to Benedictine monks rather than joining the Dominican order. It took 2 years of torture, it took 2 years of threat, but then it didn't change Thomas Aquinas. Somehow, to the point that the attempt to change his mind was getting more desperate. One day, finally, after 2 years were being kept in captivity, the mother of Thomas Aquinas finally surrendered. So one night, she let the doors open, and then she asked Thomas Aquinas to secretly escape the castle, and then without telling everyone. And then, of course, Thomas Aquinas, he said goodbye to his mom, and then he returned to his monastic order, the Dominican order. The appearance of Thomas Aquinas might fool many people during his time. Behind this appearance, Thomas Aquinas, he was a genius. And then the Dominican order saw this and then sent Thomas Aquinas to university in Paris, studied under a great scholastic theology professor, someone by the name of Albert Magnus or Albert the Great. And soon he graduated and then he became the priest, and not just that one, he became the professor of theology himself. Now Thomas Aquinas, his mind and his thinking were heavily influenced the church theology and also the Western civilization somehow. Two of his great works are, the first one is, disclaimer, pronunciation is not my thing. Most likely my Latin pronunciation is completely off, but I'll try, okay? The first book is the Summa Contra Gentiles, which is, it contains of like a basic manual of theology for the missionary who wished to travel to the Islamic world. And then the second work that he made was a huge work known as the Summa Theologica. This book covers the summary of the Christian faith, describing about who God is, who is human, and how the reconciliation between God and the human are possible. Other than that two great works, he also wrote a lot of commentaries on the Bible, and also he made a lot of commentaries about Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosophers, who was not very popular among the Christian thinkers in the Middle Ages. Aristotle's thinking was in fact considered to be heretical according to the popular Christians during those time. But however, Aristotle's way of thinking and also cosmology was being used more commonly among the Muslim thinkers. Before he reached his 50s, he wrote a lot of books, a lot of works. And somehow, towards the end of his life, he stopped writing. He wrote less and less and less. It happens just because there was a time when Thomas Aquinas, when he led the Mass as a priest, he received a vision that somehow altered his life. Something that kind of changed the way he sees things. Think it this way: the truth of God can be experienced by our reasoning, can be experienced by our senses, by our five senses. The truth of God can be grasped by our five senses to some extent through the nature itself. As we are marveling the beauty of the nature itself, then God's truth is being revealed to us. The fancy word for that is we receive what we call the general revelations of God to us through our senses, that should be sufficient enough for us to finally to have a faith in God. But of course, Thomas Aquinas did not mean that the truth of God can be grasped with only our limited reasoning. Because of our sinful nature, we are not capable to grasp the whole truth of God himself. In order for us to receive the full truth of God is through the special revelation which is given to God through grace. In what way? In the way that God become flesh, incarnate in the personhood of Jesus, and also through the scriptures. Now, this is what we call the special revelations. General revelation and special revelation. The general revelation is the way that God revealed his truth about himself through the nature, through the world. And then the special revelation is the way that God revealed his truth to us through the person of Jesus Christ and also through the scriptures. In conclusion, faith is something that achievable through reasons by observing the facts around us, by observing the truth around us in the world. However, it requires special revelations for us to fully understand who God is. And finally, we can have a faith in him. Now, for us as Christians, of course, who God is in the personhood of Jesus Christ. Alright, so that is the lessons about Thomas Aquinas. Of course, this video cannot contain the enormous work of Thomas Aquinas. So that is the lessons about Thomas Aquinas. I see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.